Law of appearances in operation. An appearance is a massing of elementals into form under the operation of the law of thought. In other words, an appearance arises from the operations of elementals as governed by thought. Appearances cannot be separated from the observer. In order for there to be appearances, there has to be an observer, which creates a relationship between the observer and the observed. In this view, the universe is not an illusion. Instead, appearances are governed by law. Revealed in humanity. In this universe, we experience appearances through our physical senses. Human senses are the instruments by which our world appears to us. Our human senses detect the natural world, which comprises the environment in which our physical bodies live. Whatever means we use to distinguish the world determines how the world shows up for us. Appearances are a specific result of how we are sensing the environment. For example, some people are very auditory, while others are more visual. Because people interpret the world through their human senses, what appears to one person might appear quite differently to another. The law of appearances results in relative reality, which means we are each perceiving and experiencing life in our own way as unique individuals. The world is not an illusion, as many people have been taught. Instead, it is a combination and summation of relative realities experienced at the individual and group level. Relative realities are always incomplete because they are based on human senses. As human beings, we are trained to focus on the observed, which means focusing on an object or a thing. However, when we focus on the relationship, we can hold the space of both the observer and the observed simultaneously. For example, an instruction manual can be seen as a disposable document, or it can be used as a guide for relating to the item being explained. Sometimes children view the world differently than adults do, but the children are dismissed when they talk about their experiences. People are generally trained to use senses in certain ways. They have been trained to see objects as solid when they are actually vibrating energy. Energy is the elementals operating in the space. When elementals group together, they form observable frequencies. Appearances created by the elementals are transitory, which means they do not last forever. This is why people sometimes refer to appearances as illusions. However, this view discounts the relative reality of appearances for observers. People who say we should not pay attention to appearances are correct in some ways and incorrect in other ways. They are correct in that appearances are not the ultimate reality of existence. They are incorrect in that appearances are real in this human existence. In other words, appearances operate according to the observer's relative reality, which means each person is experiencing the universe through their own thoughts and senses, and we ignore this at our peril. Appearances matter in this world of matter. For example, we can say that water is not real. However, it can affect your physical body in many ways. Similarly, some things that grow on trees are edible, and some are poisonous in this physical existence. Antithesis. In infinite eternal consciousness, there is no antithesis to appearances because ultimate reality underlies appearances and has no opposite. Appearances are expression of thought that take form in the world of senses and thus in relative reality. In the world of senses, the antithesis to appearances is all that we are unable to sense. We only see what we are able to see. For example, as human beings, we see a particular range of light within the full spectrum of light. By focusing attention on the eternal expressing as actions and relationships, we expand our awareness and gain access to the beingness spectrum of consciousness. This means that we see the possibilities for action as given by consciousness. The beingness expression of consciousness is a bridge between this universe and the eternal, because consciousness expresses through and as being. Application: how to include consciousness in the human experience. Be aware that the system of being that operates in this universe allows for the generation of appearances as governed by laws of being. This system results in the relative realities perceived by individuals and shared by groups. In our human form, we are limited by our lack of competency in working with laws of being. Increasing competency greatly aids our ability to take effective action and therefore live in the transcendent flow of life. Instead of being limited to physical senses, we can enhance our sense of being. When we do this, we begin to know what is beyond the basic human experience. Eternal consciousness is what is beyond, more enduring, or greater than what we experience through our limited human senses. Connecting with conscience and gaining awareness of oneness are examples of senses of being. Focusing on laws of being is a pathway to recognizing eternal consciousness, because law is the structure and the action behind all appearances. This means that the universe is ordered by the eternal, expressing as actions and relationships. While appearances and thingness are fundamental in the human experience, eternal beingness is ultimately more important. The most effective way to be a human being is to live in and from consciousness and put the personal approach in its proper place. This means use the personal approach to navigate the everyday world by eating food, taking care of the body, and participating in rejuvenating activities. Understand, however, that who you really are is a space of possibility as consciousness. Everything you observe is a space of possibility. As human beings, we are creators who can manage the intersections of potential. When you place attention on visible and invisible concepts and on physical objects, you bring together spaces of possibility, which coalesces relationships through consciousness. This is why it is important to focus on aligning with consciousness through conscience.